Let's talk about insecurities. Now, unless you are 4 to 5 days old, you have probably began to, if not already had some sort of physical insecurity, something on your body or about your body that you dislike, that you disown, that you damn near hate, right? Unless you are an infant, you just got here. And God knows I wish that you could just stay in that perfect, pure form, knowing that you're perfect. But unfortunately, you were born into a situation and circumstance where you are going to be conditioned to believe that you are anything other than perfect as you are. So unless you are that baby who is watching this right now, you were just born into earth and, somebody put you in front of the screen and you are now watching this video. For the rest of us, insecurity is something that looms over us for many of us over decades, if not an entire lifetime. There are these things that we hold over ourselves as imperfections, as not enoughness, as inadequacies that make us less than. And there are these aspects of ourselves that we often try to hide, that we try to compensate for, that, we try to eradicate completely in some cases. And so when it comes to insecurities, it's an interesting subject because I'm the sort of individual who I believe that the things that, the physical insecurities that I had were simply curses, like being a short man with long arms and a big forehead and, little pinky toes. And, you know what I mean? Like I would look at myself and just think to myself, well, there is literally nothing you can do about any of these aspects of yourself. So you might as well just call it quits on all of that and find ways to compensate, find ways to make up for those quote unquote inadequacies, right? And this was, of course, at a time where I did not understand what insecurities actually were. And, in hindsight, I can obviously see that that was misguided. It was warped. It was a belief system. It wasn't actually rooted in truth. It was instead beliefs that I took upon myself, that I internalized, ways that I found in order to invalidate myself, which is what all of us do with these insecurities. We believe they're valid. We believe that this thing makes us less than, that's the power they have. It's not a logical thing. Like when you look at it, it's like, oh my goodness, look at my big toe. Oh, look at my ears. There is no truth or validity in the fact that this thing makes you less than. Yet that's how we carry these stories. And, life is all in the story. It's all about what we're telling ourselves. We create our lives based off of our perception about ourselves and life itself, right? And so, before I even dive into how do we actually, quote unquote, get rid of the insecurity, I first want to touch base with the word itself, right? Now, when most of us use the word insecurity, we don't actually think about the word. We just think about the feeling of it, the essence of the word. And the essence is oftentimes, this thing I do not like about myself, that I hate about myself, whatever it may be, right? But when we look at the word, it tells us more about what's actually going on than pretty much anything else, right? It's a real accurate word. And I can't say that about every word that it describes everything, but insecurity explains exactly what is going on as far as what we're actually telling ourselves about ourselves. And so when you look at the word, it's simple. It's in and it's secure, right? So secure or security has a meaning that's pretty much a blanket statement for anybody listening to this. It means the lack of safety, right? In is just the lack of. So when you have insecure, you're basically saying, I am unsafe. Now, when you think about that, why would somebody feel unsafe about, the way that the skin on their knee looks, right? The positioning of their eyes, like, the size of a forehead. Why would that make us feel as if we're not safe? Because logically that does not make sense. Yet when we truly get down to what it's actually truly about, it starts to make perfect sense. And it's as simple as this. We have a belief that these certain physical characteristics are going to be a cause for our rejection. We believe that these inadequacies or quote unquote perceived inadequacies will have people to reject us, and therefore we're going to be ostracized. We're going to be kicked out of the village. We're going to be isolated, and therefore we're going to be, what's the word they use now? Deleted, right? We're going to be deleted. And this is a primordial part of the brain. This is an ancient, quote unquote, part of the brain that I believe we don't necessarily need anymore, but that's just my own belief. However, it is an aspect of us that, in essence is a survival mechanism. And some of us will now refer to it as like the egoic mind, right? The part of us that is obsessive about protecting us. And it's not actually rooted in rationality. Like its only job is to see everything as a threat in order to keep us in familiar states. And that's even the thing that keeps most of us in, these toxic cycles in life, because those might be familiar. They're not natural, but they're familiar. And so we stay in those cycles. But that's a conversation for another time. Maybe later today. We'll see. But back to the point at hand. When it comes to insecurity, it is as simple as this. At some point in our journey, we were given a story, right? About what it is to be human and what it is to, be accepted and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. We were told what is normal and what is not normal. And we started to create a life based upon these stories. Just call them what they are. We started to build a life based upon the stories that we began to internalize. And so, marketing has definitely, or advertising has definitely done a number on our society when it comes to stories told, because, simply put, many companies make their living or essentially exist simply because of the insecurities that they are pinpointing. And it's not necessarily that they are the ones who are creating it, but they're exploiting those things. They're going deeper. And now I'm not the type of person to say, oh, it's that person's fault, it's this person. I don't stand in that victimhood stance. I know that I have my own freedom to choose to engage and interact with certain conversations or not. I can tune into certain content or not, right? I can accept a message or not. I can accept influence or not. So that still comes down to the individual. It comes down to my own personal choice, but that doesn't take away from the fact that, at those earliest stages of life, I was simply consuming without any rational thought, without any sort of borders or parameters around what I would allow into my psyche. And so I allowed in stories about what it was to be desirable, right? And so for me as a male, I went through life believing, okay, the only way that, you can have the validation of women. And why do you need the validation of women? Because that makes you adequate. It makes you enough. It makes you deserving to be loved, right? And it gives you social approval, social acceptance from, other men. And it shows you that, again, you're desirable to the opposite sex. And so I found myself, deeply insecure because there were certain aspects of what was on this list of criteria to be desirable that I didn't have. I said, damn, 6 feet? Brother, I'm not close. I'm not what? Huh? And then I got to what? And then I got to have how much money? Well, that's, a little less on the physical side. But then I got to look like what? I got to have, and then the double chisel, like the jawline that goes out here. And then I got to have wait a minute. And so from a very, very young age, I was already in a place where I was looking to compensate, because that's essentially how most of us cope. Instead of truly going deep and doing the inner work and recognizing that these things are from a warped perception, like these things are not true, I was still very much in this place where I said, you know what, the only thing I can do is compensate. So what can I do to make up for this deficit? Because I was still viewing it as a deficit. I said, okay, I can work on my means of communication. I can work on, a sense of humor and things of that nature. Maybe be confident in other things. Okay, let me do this thing as opposed to that thing. And let me find my competence in that. And again, there's nothing wrong with, developing aspects of ourselves. But when it's rooted in insecurity, when it's rooted in a place of inadequacy and not enoughness, it actually exacerbates the problem. It's like pouring fuel into a fire. It makes it that much more explosive because we're not actually facing what's going on. Like I've seen a lot of brothers who start to go to the gym because they feel insecure that they're skinny or whatever it may be. And then, they start putting on muscle and they become the most muscular person in the damn gym. And yet when you have a personal interaction with them and you get to a deeper level, you realize that their insecurities are not only still there, but they're sometimes even deeper. Now, maybe not in every moment, but in the majority of the time that they're, here, living, existing, being. So they might have moments where they feel the pump or the rush or whatever it is. And, maybe they get some type of compliment or somebody's looking at them a certain way that makes them feel a certain type of way. And they're getting that little sense of external validation. But outside of that, there's still this feeling of I have to do more. Oh, I'm afraid to lose this. I'm afraid, what if my muscle fall off? Like they're looking in the mirror every 7 seconds because, oh my God forbid that, something may happen. Like I remember this dude, he was, big as Hercules. And I made a comment one time. I was like, man, you're hella skinny. Like, and, we were young, whatever it was. I mean, like late teens ish. And I just said it as a joke, literally as sarcastic as you could be. You know what I mean? It's like me going up to Margot Robbie and saying, man, you got really dark hair, right? That it just, well, maybe she has dark hair in real life. I don't know. But you know what I mean? It's like, it's obviously sarcastic. And this dude, I saw him get so deeply emotional and I couldn't believe it. And he tried, he was trying to defend it and go in. And I was like, wait a minute, what is this about? What is this about? And then, when I did some introspection for myself, I said, oh, I get that. I get that because that's an insecurity and that's something you're trying to compensate for. Again, the same for me. It's like, walking in a room full of, tall dudes or whatever it was. And it's like, damn, like here I am in this space and I got to find a way to stand out. I got to find a way to, to be seen or to be heard. I got to find a way to be valuable, validated. And the interesting thing is, like, for many of us, the very thing we think is such a terrible thing or such a bad thing, like, most people actually don't give a damn about. They don't care unless they have that same insecurity within themselves, right? Like, they're just looking at their own thing. It's like if that person has the ear thing, you have the nose thing, the person is thinking about their nose thing, you're thinking about the ear thing, and they're not even recognizing whatever it is on you because we're so fixed on our own worlds. So you're walking into that space thinking, oh, all these people feel so amazing about themselves and I feel terrible and I got to find a way to feel better, and oftentimes we'll just evade those spaces. We just won't even be in the room at all. And so again, this is just, unpacking what's actually going on beyond the surface level. We have a belief that this is just a valid thing that we just have to accept. And even sometimes we then start to create an identity around that insecurity, right? I'm insecure about this thing, about myself. Therefore, I'm going to create a support group and social group. And, we're going to create an acceptance movement, which can be a wonderful thing. However, when it's still rooted in this thing of making it a focus, you're not actually dealing with the core of what's going on. So let's get into the core of what's going on and how we actually deal with this. The first thing is, back to this point of compensation. That's usually the first strategy that we use, right? We try to compensate for something. We try to make up for something. So maybe you're feeling, okay, I'm not enough of a man because I don't have enough of a chiseled jaw and a beard, right? So maybe I can't grow a beard in real life. So, if I can't buy implants, then what I'm going to do is, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get rich as hell and I'm going to have so much money that my money acts as a beard. I know that sounds crazy, but it's like, that could be the case, right? It's like, okay, I'm skinny, I'm scrawny. It's hard for me to put on muscle. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to get so rich that I'm going to surround myself with muscular people in order to feel like I'm protected, like I'm adequate, like there could be so many strange ways. And I know these are extreme versions, but we often do it in, in these subtle ways. I don't like, whatever blemish. So I'm going to continue to cover it up through makeup, or I'm going to use some sort of surgery, right? To quote unquote, fix that thing. And, there's a powerful book. It's actually like probably the one book that I would still keep in my life from like my self-help, quote unquote, self-help journey. It's a book by the name of Psycho-Cybernetics, and it's a book by a man named Dr. Maxwell Maltz. This man was formerly a plastic surgeon in like the 1930s and became a psychotherapist when he realized that what he was dealing with was not actually physical, but instead it was internal. It was psychological, right? So he would have somebody come in and say, my nose is too big. I don't like my nose. It's the reason why, my wife left me. I lost my job, blah, 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 right? Life is terrible. So he said, please fix my nose. And so Dr. Maxwell would fix the nose, and all of a sudden person walks out and have a brand new life. However, there were also those who would come in, same story about the nose, get the nose done, and they would go out into life and nothing would change or things would get worse. And they blamed him for not doing a good enough job. Now, if you looked at these people, it's obvious that they had work done, and like the nose was always fine, but the nose is the exact same as the person who now has a different life. And what he realizes, it's the image that we have of ourselves within our minds. It's how we're seeing ourselves and perceiving ourselves that's then manifesting as our life experience. I realize that even as being, a black man, it's like if I put everything on racism, then every single slight, every, look, every whatever is just going to be, in this perception of racism. Like that's how perception works. Whatever story we hold, that's going to be our life experience. Oh man, they're looking at me because of, my eyebrows are crooked, or, my lip is too thin, or my lip is too big, or, like we'll create these stories. And maybe we had some sort of quote unquote evidence within our own experience where somebody said, oh, your lip is too big, or your eyebrows crooked, you're too short, your head's too small, your head's too big, your ears too big. Like maybe we had that experience, but even in that, we could not yet recognize that form of bullying was happening simply because that individual had their own insecurities that they were trying to make up for, which is another coping mechanism we use, which is to then basically project onto other individuals, right? This is the lowest form of coping, but it is still a means of coping that we do use nonetheless, where, we'll make fun of somebody else and say, oh, they have, look at the bigger gap in their teeth, or, look at the crustier, skin that they have than my own. Like we won't even point to ourselves and say, oh, compared to me necessarily, but we will use that as kind of like our leverage, as our one up. We love to do that as people. We love to, instead of, putting us all on an equal playing field and seeing us all as loved and acceptable, we say, I feel terrible about myself, so I'm going to degrade the other to make them so low in the eyes of others, or in their own eyes, that I actually feel like a somebody, which is, again, that's purely rooted from a state of insecurity. No person who is secure within themselves will ever degrade another in the hopes of making themselves higher. What they will do is they will elevate themselves and they will elevate others. That's simple as that. They won't pedestalize somebody else, right? They won't make somebody else a god in their life, but they also won't, keep themselves lowly or try to trump the other individual, right? That's never going to be the case. So that is a means that many of us do use to cope. And again, it is a terrible short-term solution. All of these are terrible short-term solutions because they're coping as opposed to healing. It's like if you had a wound and you just continue to, poke it and do certain things, or you never actually dealt with it. You never actually treated it the way it needs to be treated, or maybe just got out the way if that's what it needs in order for it to truly heal. And so what we want to get into is a space of healing. And that healing comes from recognition of what we actually are. Now, this starts with the acceptance, first and foremost, that the opinions of others are invalid immediately when it comes to you and who you are. That may sound crazy to some of us who have lived our entire lives off the basis of what other people think about us, right? For myself, I lived the majority of my life, thus far at least. I'm 28 at this point, so 28 and a half, right? But I lived the majority of my life up to this point believing that the opinions of others were not only valid, but that they were more important than my own. And so I would perpetually do things, live in a way that would get me people's acceptance and approval because my own was not enough. I didn't understand that what I thought I needed from others, I actually had within myself. I didn't get that yet. Now, obviously, I do, which is why I'm able to speak on it from this vantage point. But, that's how I was moving through life. And so, of course, I cared what somebody thought or felt about me. And I believe that it was a wiser decision to, manipulate my external surroundings, to fix people's minds somewhere else so they wouldn't look at the thing that would have me not approved of, that would have me not loved or, not accepted, the thing that would maybe have me rejected, which again is all going on in my mind. This is all a social conditioning. Oh, by the way, before I get too deep into this one, another coping is to force people into accepting whatever it is that is your deepest insecurity, right? That's another means. But yeah, I'm not even gonna get too deep. You already caught that one. You know who you are if you're the one in that place, and it's okay, but it is a terrible strategy. It never works. So back to solution is at first we must recognize that we are enough. which is such a cliche. It's all over the place, self-love, etc. But it's true. That's why it's a cliche. That's why it is, this kind of almost overly expressed thing. It's truth. It's real. It is foundational that within you is everything that you need. You are loved. You are perfect in and of yourself. There's nothing you have to fix. There's only that which you must recognize. Because here's the thing, right? We think, okay, if I fix a problem about myself, whether it's external, internal, whatever, right? Then I'm going to be whole. This is a warped mentality or a skewed perception, because when you are already whole, which you are, and you're already enough, which you are, if you're looking to fix a problem that doesn't exist, you will perpetually be fixing a problem that doesn't exist. There's no solution to a problem that isn't there. And so we're sold upon problems that do not actually exist. So am I saying that your ears aren't a certain length? Am I saying that your arms aren't a certain size, or your fingers aren't a certain width, or what? Am I saying that? No. What I'm saying is, in and of yourself, you are perfect. You were created in perfection. Exactly how you are is exactly how you're supposed to be. And to simply recognize and accept that is the whole truth. That is the entire game. I mean, I think that's the entire purpose of this life, is to realize, oh, wow, I was always enough. I was always whole. And I never needed anybody else to tell me I was that. Because some of us, we wait for somebody to come into our experience and tell us enough times, right? And we think that's going to solve it. If I just find Bay and Bay tells me enough times that I'm enough, then I'm going to feel like enough. They may help as an aid, but they cannot replace you in that equation. You must be the one to recognize that within yourself. And, this might obviously not be easy for somebody to hear and accept. Like, you want some sort of solution that's, going to fix something, because we have been conditioned to believe in this flawed nature of humanity. You're broken, you're fallen, you're not enough, you're inadequate, and you need something to fix you, whether it's an entity out there, whether it's, some solution on the screen, whether it's that next thing, whatever that next thing may be, the next trend, the next fixer. We're always looking for something to fix, or maybe just to drown ourselves from the problem completely, by numbing ourselves. And we recognize, I believe all of us recognize at some level, that these things do not satisfy. They do not. I'm a believer in wealth and prosperity. I believe that you must, in order to have the greatest influence in life, allow yourself to be wealthy, allow yourself to be prosperous. You can make a great difference in your own life and the lives of others. Okay. However, the reason why many people are afraid of even getting into wealth is because there's this belief. It's like, well, if I even get wealth anyway, first I'm gonna be rejected. People are gonna, be jealous, whatever. But if I even get there, it's not gonna solve my problems. And, the purpose of money or anything else is not to solve a problem, because there's no problem to be solved. If you already recognize that you're enough now, at $0 or negative $0, then you can recognize that you're enough with $1 billion. Like, if you could recognize that you're perfect and loved and enough right here, with the stubby pinky, then you can recognize it, period. Like, there is nothing that has to be fixed. There's nothing that has to be solved. That's the great illusion of life. That is, again, what we have bought into. We have sold ourselves on this story. We've internalized the story that there's something that is irregular, something that is, like we talk about shame. That's what shame is. Something is wrong with me. So something has to be fixed within me. And, for years I fell into the space of personal development, of self-improvement, trying to improve myself, trying to prove myself as valuable enough, right? Work and work and work and work and work and, grind until your face melts off type of mentality, works based. When I was in the religious space, it was, save, sacrifice, self-sacrifice, anything just to get the validity and the acceptance and the appreciation of those around me, before I could recognize that these were things that I so needed from myself, and I so deeply deserved from within myself. And so, we may be looking at this and thinking from two sides. It's like, yes, that's truth, because your spirit recognizes truth when it's said. right? But then there's the other side of the program which says that's nonsense, that's BS, I need to fix this, that egoic mind, right? We're still going to be rejected, people aren't going to love us, people aren't going to like us. And I empathize with that, and I understand that. Trust me, I get it. I completely get it. But it doesn't change the fact that that is not truth. It's still a liar. It's still a perception, a false and a warped perception. And the faster we come to accept that, then the faster we get to seeing who we actually are, right? And not everybody is ready at the very moment to let go of those insecurities, to let go of those perceived inadequacies, because they are familiar. And the familiar is a very alluring, addictive place in most cases. It is something that we latch onto for some sense of, of comfort, in essence. It might not feel good, but it is comfortable. If it's all we have known, then it's simply all we've known. And we don't know what's on the other side. Again, the egoic mind feels like it's gonna croak, right? That's a word for you right there, croak. We could use that one. Deleted, croak. It feels as if it is going to lose its utter sense of self. And the beauty is when you actually realize like what's going on, the game that's being played within our minds, you realize that sense of loss, that sense of, quote unquote, deletion that happens. I'm gonna just say the word. The ego death is the greatest thing that could happen to any of us, because then and only then do we step into our true identity. Simple as that. It's the only way. We must let go of the perceived version of ourselves in order to step into the true version of ourselves. The one that is love, that is the embodiment of exactly that. The one that knows you're enough. And the things that you may, have not liked about yourself, let's say the things that you can change. Let's say you want to lose a couple pounds, or, you want to have a certain type of lifestyle and career and financial gain, whatever it is, those things start to come more seamlessly. But when we beat ourselves up about something, we're actually keeping that energy fixed. We're keeping that in place. That's something for a whole nother time. We're going to take a deep, deep dive into just the energetics of, of weight loss and things of that nature. But when it comes to, again, these physical aspects, these parts of our uniqueness, like we go out and we look at nature and we look at the flowers or whatever, if you're a nature type individual, and we think, wow, how beautiful, wow, how beautiful. We don't think, oh man, that one right there, it has way too many petals. It's got like, oh, look at that one right there. It's way too yellow. That one should like dim down its yellow a little bit. If you're that type of person, you're probably a psychopath. I kid. Maybe a little bit. But you technically aren't going out there to look at the trees and, to point out its inadequacies. We do that with ourselves, and then we project it onto others, right? Until we finally let go of the stories. Like when I started realizing like, bruh, I'm perfect the way I am. And the perfection didn't come from just because I'm getting the girl's attention anyway, or, oh, this actually doesn't matter. Oh, they actually think I'm cute. They think it didn't come from that. I can't build my confidence off of the perception of others. Otherwise my destruction will come from the perception of others as well. And that's a key point. That's a key point. It's like, okay, this thing doesn't matter now because, they're not noticing it. So I've gotten away with it. So yay, I accept myself now. No, that's not how it works. It's not accepting it because now somebody else is accepting it. It's accepting it because you accept it. That's what matters. And it's only when you get to that point that you are truly going to be free. And you ask me, how do I get there? Well, you make the decision. And the decision, I believe, has already been made. It's just now you going through that process. And the process is a weeding process. It's not going to feel comfortable in many cases. But the outcome is always going to be the natural state. It's going to be coming back to self. It might not be familiar necessarily, but it's going to get you back to the truth of who you truly are. And it's going to become your norm at a certain point. Like for me, these things that used to occupy my mind every day on a daily basis, all the time, it used to bother me deeply. And I used to be always ruminating on, I don't even think about them anymore. Unless it's maybe if I'm joking about it or something like that. But it's like they become so irrelevant because my life has become inwardly focused. I recognize that this is who I am, and this is the life that I'm living, and life is wonderful. It's a beautiful experience when we allow ourselves to live from this place instead of these false perceptions and stories that, we've carried and believed to be something that they truly were not. So that's all I got for y'all. Till the next time. Peace. Fell in love with
sunshine. Fell in love with the light. Fell in love with the full moon. Fell in love in the night. I used to be afraid of the dark, a place unknown like a heart in their heart. I used to see my life in the bar. Now the kids unchained, every shackle is lost. 2 steps in the moonlight, 2 step in the daytime. You just know when it feel right. You got a feeling the time's not. See you through those shades that I just threw on. Through my lenses, you just can't do no wrong. I fell in love with myself again. I fell in love with myself. I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light again. I can see the light.